From the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, this is Nebraska Farmcast. I'm Ryan Evans, and on this episode, I'm glad to be joined again by Glennis McClure, an extension educator and farm and ranch management analyst with UNL's Center for Ag Profitability and Department of Agricultural Economics. We're going to be discussing the new livestock-related Nebraska Custom Rates Report for 2025, published by the Center for Ag Profitability and available on our website at cap.unl.edu/custom rates. The report provides insights into what livestock producers and custom operators are charging and paying for a wide range of services across the state. Glennis, good to have you on the podcast again.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, so to start off, can you just give us a quick overview of what Livestock Custom Rates Report is and why it's important to Nebraska producers?
Well, obviously, cattle production in Nebraska is really important. I think there's like 6 head of cattle per every one person. We rank second as far as cattle or livestock production here, just second to Texas. So anyway, there's a lot of activity going on out and about in Nebraska. Folks that obviously love working with cattle, love working with, animals, not just cattle. Again, we've got questions in our survey about services for the swine industry and the sheep industry, et cetera. What we're asking folks here is what if they provide some services, if they help their neighbors or help others, let's say they have a general area where they provide services related to the livestock industry, what would they be charging for their services? And sometimes it's on a per head basis, sometimes it's on a per hour basis, that kind of thing. So if someone's shearing sheep, that might be a custom rates piece that we would get information back on. So again, we send that out. We work with our livestock educators here at University of Nebraska Extension, obviously they've got a lot of great connections, and so we ask them to help distribute the survey, also, of course, through our Center for Ag Profitability online, folks can access that information. So. We do this in conjunction. We also have a general custom rates survey that we've done for a long, long time. This is the second go round, I guess you might say, of the livestock custom rates survey and report. We did one a couple years ago, and it was for 2023. So this is the 2025 report, and again, it's pretty new, we've gathered some data and we've put together a report to help folks with just general information. I always tell people that our custom rates information is really to be used as a guide. Right. It's really not something that someone should pick up, say, this is what I have to pay somebody to do these services, or this is actually what I have to charge. Because we know that in our surveys, we get ranges, we get different somebody might want to charge $10 for something while someone else is charging $5, okay? Mm-hmm. But again, as what we do with our teaching here and with, figuring out management kinds of things is that you really need to know your cost. So what is your time worth? What does it cost you to drive somewhere and to provide these services? Do you have equipment? Is that equipment being depreciated? All those kinds of things. What are those costs involved in that? So to take all that in consideration, this is really a guide where you might see, I call it maybe a market rate study. So we can, we want to know what, certain things, prices are and so on. And so again, this is just, an example of that as we focus on services related to the livestock industry.
So you mentioned a handful of those services that are included in the report. So how do you determine which services to ask about every other year when this has been done now for the second time? And if you can just talk more about the kinds of services that are included in this new report.
Well, again, when it was new back in 2023, we actually just, we talked to some industry folks. We talked to some producers. We definitely relied a lot on our livestock educators to sort of design the survey and like what are the key things that folks get questions about. So, in the University of Nebraska Extension, we get calls from producers. We get calls from people that are providing services. And, this helps us with information to say, hey, this again, here's some data. Here's a report that shows what some of these services, what some folks may be charging or what some folks may be paying. So again, we took time to develop all of that when we did the 2023 survey. This year we had some tweaks to it. And again, a lot of that came from the folks that work in the industry, primarily a lot of our livestock educators and so on. Just some minor tweaks really to it. There were a few questions we didn't ask. But anyway, the types of categories, if you will, that we include in the survey is we've got, again, custom land and pasture maintenance types of things, fencing and trenching and for all of that. And then, common custom services per species. So like, processing cattle, hogs, poultry, sheep. Those were questions that were asked. Now, we didn't always get the responses that we can include in our report because, again, we need to have a certain number we need to have at least three responses that are, within range. We don't want a real outlier,
Right.
Let's say if somebody, the general average or the general range is, $5 to $10 and somebody's put $30. I mean, that's kind of an outlier, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. So we do actually clean that data a bit. But anyway, hauling livestock, custom feed preparation, haying and baling, equipment rentals, and manure pumping, hauling, and application. So those are the key areas that we focused on as we developed the questions for the survey and those things that are in the report when, again, we have enough responses.
And we know that custom rates reports are among the most widely read extension publications here at Nebraska. So can you just talk about some more about their role in day-to-day or seasonal decision making?
Well, yeah, again, does someone have the time, let's say, to, let's say I just have a few acres of hay. I want my my waterways and a few acres of, grass hay to be baled. Is it worth me going out and purchasing that, kind of expensive equipment? Or is it better, I guess, to ask somebody else to do it for me? Okay. Same way with, putting up fence. I might just have a little bit of fence. I'm not the expert in doing it. I've got a neighbor or I know, someone in the area that does a lot of fencing work. And so, again, this kind of information will give you an idea of what may be charged for their time, or, again, maybe it's, charging per hole and digging holes for fence. It may not be on an hourly basis. We try to ask things kind of in multiple ways, and sometimes we get responses, like that, with fencing, it may be that we're getting an hourly rate and we're not getting like a per foot rate. So again, we ask those questions. We don't always get the responses, but again, this should help folks at least have a general idea of what I may have to pay if I'm asking somebody to provide services. And then, there's some common services and folks might want to say, well, what if maybe I should be charging more or less, to actually provide the service.
Great. And what are some things when you compare this year's report, now that it's the second report, to the previous go-around, the inaugural report in 2023? Is there anything that sticks out to you as far as trends or just changes this year when you look at the report and compare the rates?
Well, I didn't really see a lot of major changes. So there's some common kinds of services like, some folks do AI for cattle. And so we have a rate per head that has been reported. And so I can see that went up a couple dollars per head from $11.83 in 2023 to $13.75 as an average. And we do have a range on that. It goes from $10 per head to $20. I see that care for cow-calf pairs on summer pasture in 2023 was $1.11 on a rate per head per day basis, and now it's $1.56. We've had a pretty good run on the cattle side of things as far as prices go, and so I would imagine a lot of times some of those rates have gone up. There might be more demand. And again, folks might say, well, I haven't raised my rates for a while. It's time to raise my rates because cattle folks have been doing pretty well. As far as processing, a processing fee on cattle finishing, a rate per head, we had that just went up less than 10 cents on a rate per head basis. And our yardage basis, a yardage rate for cattle finishing, rate per head per day, went up about 7 cents. And again, you also have to look at the report on like how many did we get that reported on this. So, you might say, oh, there was only 14 people that reported on this particular item. That might be a really good number. Some things we might only have 4 that reported. Again, we do not include those rates in here if we don't get at least 3 within range, sort of typical types of answers. I went through like on hauling cattle. Of course, you would imagine that would, tend to go up. I see that it actually went down from our 2023 average, and we have included that in our general survey the last several years anyway. So it went down almost $1 rate per loaded mile. Now, what makes a difference with that? It could be that the fuel prices make a difference. So it might be that when we asked that question back in the 22 timeframe and with the 23 report, that our fuel prices were higher, and that's kind of softened a bit. But on the hauling cattle that was with an 18-wheeler with a semi, but hauling cattle with a stock trailer, that did go up, in this survey. And our baling costs, it just went up slightly. So again, you can look at the ranges and how those have changed from one survey to the next, and also what those averages are. I know with this particular survey, we didn't get enough response. Or maybe we didn't ask the question, and we always kind of watch for that when people make comments. We didn't ask the question the way people think about charging or paying for certain things. So we didn't get any information on this particular survey this time on manure hauling, manure loading, and that kind of thing. So it can vary from what we had in our report from 2023 to what we have in our 2025 report. Can all vary just based on the kinds of responses, the number of responses that we've got for certain services.
Sure. And because you depend on those responses to compile a good report, you're always looking for custom service providers and people who pay for those services to contribute to the survey and take the survey to contribute to the report. So can you tell us again about just the schedule you're on with the custom rates report and how people can help if they want to?
Right. So our schedule has been now, we've done the livestock survey now for custom rates twice, so the 2023 and the 2025 year. And our general custom rate survey, which is really a much larger survey, it encompasses a lot of, some of these services are in both, but a lot of it, that's more crops focused really. And so that will be coming out again at the end of this year, early 2026. We gather those responses, and then by the second quarter probably of 2026, that report should be ready. And, I do have folks that really anticipate that. We'll call and say, hey, I'd really like to have that information so I can base my, my charges on sort of what the general market is bearing out there. Now with this livestock survey, we did a little bit different approach, and we asked folks that either they were able to provide information if they paid for services or if they provided services. So we've done that a little bit different. For this response this time around, we had like 68% of the respondents were those that provided services, and the rest were those that paid for services. Okay. So 68 and 32% difference there. But on the regular custom rates survey that we'll be doing later this year, and will be a 2026 report. We really focus on those that are providing services. So if you, we really appreciate, as you said, we really appreciate folks participating, in the survey, because again, the more we have, the more information we have, I feel like, again, the better data, the better report we have. It's just a more sound report. I mean, it obviously, if I get 3 or 4 responses on something, I'm like, really? Is that legit? How legitimate is some of that? But if I have 60 responses, then I can really look at averages. I can really look at, and consider that data really valuable. So what we like to have folks do is let us know. Contact anyone with the Center for Ag Profitability or your extension office, your extension educators out there. Let them know that you're doing custom work and that you'd like to participate in the survey. We also have a link. We have a page on our CAP website, as Ryan mentioned, cap.unl.edu, and you can search for UNL custom rates, and that page will pop up. And there's a place that you can sign on and participate in the survey. So we keep track of those folks, and then we have a pretty good sizable database of folks that have participated in the past. And we try to contact those. We've gone to trying to do, just to save cost, we've tried to change the survey so it's an online survey. We'd still do paper copies, and we're glad to provide people with the paper survey still. But online saves cost. Obviously, mailing doesn't get any cheaper. And so, again, let us know if you've got an email, then we would just contact you through email with that survey, with that link to the survey, so you could go in and provide your information. So,
well, that's Glennis McClure, Extension Educator and Farm and Ranch Management Analyst with the Center for Agricultural Profitability here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And you can find more information on Nebraska custom rates, surveys, and reports on the Center for Ag Profitability's website. That's cap.unl.edu/custom rates. Thanks so much, Glennis.
Thank you, Ryan.
Nebraska Farmcast is a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. For the latest research-based information and education resources to manage your farm or ranch operation, visit our website at cap.unl.edu. That's cap.unl.edu.